Anyway, thank you, Jeff. You know, there's a lot I could say about the school and all the people who are here, but I'm going to skip that and talk and get into talking about architectural stuff. I like stuff because it's everything. It fills the human body and the universe. It's the contents of an ecology or law. In addition, it's a useful term because it is understated, unpretentious, and accessible. It emphasizes the mundane. It implies a lack of hierarchy. It suggests equivalence between diverse elements. It suggests cheap. It's anti-fetish, anti-branding, anti-comfort. It's of the time. It's like big box. It allows for a certain humor, and it's often found in the attic. However, stuff is more than things or elements. It's also organizational attributes. Do I have to turn this down a bit because I'm getting feedback? Oops. Okay. You can still hear me in the back, I assume. Can you hear me in the back? All right. It's more than things and elements. It has organizational attributes. It implies density. It suggests that it can be acted on or manipulated, and that it has to be dealt with in a straightforward manner. Density is important because it's the new craftsmanship. It's a kind of transparency, neither literal nor phenomenal. It encourages multiple readings. One element always plays in many stories. It allows for specificity without certainty, and thus is anti-one-liner. It's more stuffed into less. It forces an economy of gesture, and it encourages the episodic and the eclectic. Systems are critical to density because one part can evoke a whole. Action and manipulation are relevant because they encourage being knocked about and punch drunk. They force us to question the stasis of architecture. They allow for a game of logical consequences, i.e. pushing and shoving. They add grammar to stuff, compression, flipping, sliding, spewing, etc. They undercut comfort and complacency. They imply outside forces, i.e. context. And tracking or tracing action is a new kind of detailing. Finally, straightforwardness is useful because it encourages the solving of the problem. It addresses the mundane and is not afraid of the literal. It takes advantage of the fact that God sees all. It encourages simple readings and therefore multiple perspectives. And it's often referred to as the plumber's guide to architecture. Although I claim this way for thinking about architecture or indeed the world, it's clear that I'm not alone. Lucy, who you see here, the Margate elephant, is a good example. The humor is clear. With eyes like that, she cannot possibly take herself too seriously. But also evident is the packed plan and the particularity of the consequent stuff, thus giving elephant's ear a new meaning. If we look at St. George Bloomsbury, who can say that Hawksmoor wasn't thinking about architectural stuff? The stuff proliferates. The temple and the steeple church. So the temple obviously here, the steeple church. The Greek cross. So in the plan you see the Greek cross. The triumphal arch, the treasury, the step pyramid / mausoleum, the statue. So all those things sort of piled up there. And the keystones, just to mention a few of the elements. The density is undeniable as they're all vying for the same place. The action is also severe as the temple is skewered by the church. The triumphal arch is squished by the treasury and the pyramid. The church walls are bent. The temple walls are compressed, and the center is popped up. So there you see the center being popped up. Even the keystones pop up. If we look inside, we see all the issues again. The horizontal of the temple running this way, the vertical of the church running that way, the compression of the church. So we see the sort of nave windows, which are bent around the corner because the church has been compressed that way. And in case we don't really believe it, we also get the reading of the temple on the ceiling with the nave and the side aisles in the piece of stucco underneath that piece. Chiraud's Maison de Verre is the same game, different stuff. This time it's industrial stuff that has been manipulated and jammed into the corner under an existing third floor. It's a frozen Chinese puzzle of L's. Like St. George Bloomsbury, the bits often act in more than one scenario. For instance, the service wing is both the front facade bent around the corner and a piece of apparatus pulled from the house. However, the real story lies in the difference between the translucency and transparency, the making of a symbolic city, the utopian projection of industrialized standardization, the development of an architectural vocabulary, and the illusion and actuality of mobility and the ultimate machine for living. What are you saying, Jose? With Venturi's mother's house, the stuff is reduced to an eclectic array of architectural elements jammed together. The picturesque house front, the chimney, the dado inside and out, the graphic arch, the graphic arch with the traveling window, so this window which has been relocated from over there, the strip window, the large and small punched windows, and the picture window. The picture window is this big window back up underneath the entrance. On the back, the Roman window on top and Raphael's Palazzo shop fronts and the modernist voids, the suburban sliding doors are further indication. The stair to nowhere, the garret attic, the oversized fireplace with too thin mantle, and the compressed stair, the offset front door, most of it in motion. They are elements playing in multiple scenarios, packed in, slipping, and sliding. The Kimball Art Museum is at once the Baths of Caracalla and a railroad yard, Versailles and a Texas warehouse. If we understand manipulation as a kind of organization, the Kimball has it in spades. The repetitive vaults spaces are anything but chopped, compressed, emptied, and dropped. Front to back, the ABA represents the old. Side to side, the 120-foot span is all about the new. The courtyards are another elaboration. Objects in a field, small, medium, large, extra large, compressed and stretched, all glass, no glass, half glass, single and double story. So the courtyards are small, medium, large, extra large. There's the glass on two sides, solid all the way around, glass on all four sides, and sort of open. So again, the whole sort of elaboration of them. Service and served are at once adamant and blurred. Sterling Stuttgart Staatsgalerie is all about shock, a history of architecture, the Eddy effect, center to edge, front and profile, big and small, grand and informal, bent bars absorbing the neighborhood, and dare I say, the Rockettes. The multiple centers, the folded walls, and bits of context absorbed, the historical puns all contribute. Then there's the separate routes, the two routes for the neighbors through the site, the promenade along Adenauerstrasse, the entrance processions to the museum and the theater, the museum procession with attachments or exits, the garage sequence of service routes for the museum and the theater, and the curtailed administration and cafe accesses. So, they're basically jammed into the plan. But for instance, The sequence from the street up to the museum entrance, and then through the museum entrance, up the ramp, round to the galleries, and then back around that way would be an example of the elaboration of a route. Koolhaas's Villa de Lava continues the themes of density, action, and logical consequences. For density, it is once a chopped-up Villa Savoie and a country estate packed into a Parisian suburb with a house and garden overlaid on each other, and the conjugation of elements or episodic essays, for instance, the stairs, which come in many different forms. For the action, there is the geological shift. So we get the sort of stone layer, underground river, and then a dirt layer with the roof garden on top. The side-to-side compaction, the front-to-back slippage, and the garden wall, just to mention a few. So for instance, this is the garden, or the way the house really works from city to garden is this way, with this wall which has been wrapped up around, little garden door back behind the wall here, moving that way. For logical consequences, there's the deceptively simple plan with the living bar, the two bedroom wings, the transformation of the ABA to an S diagram, the balancing of the push and pulls, the simple. So here is the what would normally be two wings or two pieces which pulled out here have been slipped this way, transforming the ABA into a S diagram. The simple, and then finally there's the simple, inexpensive applied materials both to articulate the differences and make the house accessible. My work continues the themes, or this way of seeing the world. Design is a prototype. This was a house done in the 70s. At the time, Corb was big, so these are the letters that Corb used. Truk is objects were big, so everyone was talking about objets in French. But in fact, truk means trinket, so it's a sort of crummy little object. So Maison Truk is all about that. Designed as a prototype for suburban living, Maison Truk reevaluates the optimism that accompanied the early 20th century industrialization. The modern movement presumed an impending revolution in domestic life that failed to occur. And with that failure, the utopian idealism of those years had to come to terms with a prevailing cultural disposition towards an easy way. The benefits for the whole were replaced by a misguided conception of individual freedom. The image of the truck updates earlier romantic images of trains, boats, and planes. Technologically ordinary rather than new or outstanding, the truck admits to no ideal. It's just a pragmatic way of getting something from here to there. However, as perceived on the open American road or as applied to the house, it can be mined for its elemental quality. In its most literal sense, the truck is a representation. The truck is a representation of portable space that is cheaply mass-produced. Independence is its ideal, and transience is its reality. Instead of a larger house with an emphasis on comfort, the truck box establishes a smaller house with an emphasis on content. Content is both particularized space and artifacts. This truck is all cowboy. The champagne and silver slippers of the 20s and the glories of the Castle Walk have been run over by the Marlboro Man. Anybody here under 40 who knows who the Marlboro Man is? That's good. Anyway, in the 70s, Marlboro cigarettes were sold by the Marlboro Man who was a cowboy. Anyway. Little space, more character, house functionaries are caught up in another story. Thus, the diesel exhaust vents the oven. The cab is a breakfast room with a hydraulic table. The cab grill is the projector for the outdoor movie screen. So the projector pulls out of here and shines on the outdoor movie screen. The powder room is an oil drum. The coffee table is a skid. And you'll see the coffee table again. The bedroom closet is 7th Avenue push carts, and the trailer wheels describe an ionic column. So here are the 7th Avenue push carts for the master bedroom upstairs, and then down in the basement, the wheels are the capital of an ionic column. However, lest one lose all association with house, there are also the compressed elements from stately homes. So the ping pong ball catcher is once a cornice and a Baroque balustrade. The roof handrail bulges to a Tuscan oil drop. Tuscan oil drop is actually this piece, and they put them in Tuscan castles. So for unwanted visitors. So when your enemy arrived, you poured oil on them, and that was the end of that. Anyway, and the projections on the street elevation are scaled Renaissance balconies. As a shield from the street, this truck stop facade defers to the neighborhood. The exposed cab confers the caprice of mobility on an otherwise stable object. The view of the truck cab through the driveway entrance gives a hint of the other world behind the facade, where the trailer and cab contain the real and everyday entrance. The street door has an unusually high genuflection sill that interrupts the ceremonial entrance by making it difficult to get through. So as people are ducking and stepping to get over, they get the oil poured on them because it's a suburban entrance, which of course we know that nobody enters from the street. Besides its obvious statement about suburbia, this gesture also is an introduction to a series of events that attempt to make explicit and therefore accessible some architectural considerations of procession, alternate route, and urbanism. By hiding the entrance function of the ceremonial front door, one is forced to understand other actions, such as the bowing before the temple house. The fire pole, slide, ladder, stairs indicate that alternate route is more than processional and service or inside and out. So back here, there's a fire pole from the roof. Obviously, the circle stairs. Down here is a slide into the basement, which replaces the coal chute of a stately home or an old-fashioned home. The ladder is on the second floor, so you'll see that in a bit. The subway grading, alleyway, loading platform, and areaway are all elements of a more urban place. So one can come through onto the front porch, enter the house that way, or go down some steps through the alleyway to the back garden that way. The areaway is here by the real front door, so the subway grading, which can be removed and then put large objects down into the basement. And the loading platform is the little terrace, which is off of the living room. Economy of gesture is both more for less and more for more. For instance, the driveway void in the street facade is both cut away, as indicated by the relocated outdoor movie screen. So that's what you watch from the breakfast room, or when your friends come over and sit in their car in the driveway. And pulled away is which is allowed by the fixed structure of the catwalk and the rolled end. So at the far end, there was the rolling, and then the idea that pole holds the rail, which allows the facade to slip back. On the other hand, differences can also be made between seemingly similar situations. The back corner of the studio is a compressed corner, as revealed by the color of the exterior and the bulging darkroom wall on the interior. The crushed corner of the trailer with the kitchen is indicated by a consistency of material. So here is making a distinction between the so-called compressed corner, which is compressed that way, revealing the inside wall, and then not so clear over here is the crushed corner, where, as if the truck had hit a bridge and had the trailer pushed in. As the objects assume a preference for legibility over squandered image, space is defined by a particular shape over spatial largesse. Thus, the kitchen and study are characterized not by their size or content, which are essentially the same as the appliances and furniture have been generalized. They are distinguished by the distortions, actions on or contradictions and extensions of the space. The kitchen is bound on three sides by glass projection to the street, the gallery of the upper hall, and the sunset tube of the diesel exhaust. On the other hand, the study is only relieved by the constricted slits of in the facade that you saw before and the circular skylight. So making equivalences between those two things. The living room is only distortions: the oil drum, the narrowing of the hall, the study step landing, the compression from the platform, and the rotation out into the garden. The extent. So if you were to try to describe or inscribe the living room, this would be its shape. So it's the saying that it's not a very big space, but it has lots of character by the shape of it. The dining room and the extension of the dining room sideboard all give the space a configuration that can be identified. The studio garage is an intermittent step between the 20s and now. So there you see, there's that so-called compressed corner, which was pushed down here, which would cause that what was once a flat wall to be sort of curved out into the space. It's a box and the packing in which the truck house arrived. The truck fragments, the piece of the kitchen, the guest couch are part of a contemporary cubist composition and exist in contrast to the complete images of the post-cubist truck house. This is the solo townhouses done with James Sterling. Worked with him in England and then came back and taught with him at Yale for a number of years, and then for a while ran his New York office. And this was a competition done for Sheldon Solo, who has the 9 on 57th Street, the building with a 9 in front of it. Anyway, he did a Mesian glass, 40-story Mesian residential tower on 62nd Street and 2nd Avenue in Manhattan, and put a 2-story parking garage behind it on the side street, and then asked Richard Meyer and James Sterling to do a competition to give him ideas about how to put townhouses on top of it. Basically, I did this, but it was Jim and I working together. For the developer, there were 2 issues. The structure of the townhouse needed to approximate the 18-foot bays of the parking garage. So as one walks along the street, well, here's 18 feet. So this is actually 36 feet. So the structure had to come down on the columns, essentially, of the parking garage below. The other is that it was luxury housing. Big entertaining, but luxury houses meant big entertaining spaces and lots of amenities, including things like private elevators. So the big entertaining spaces was like a living room of 18 by 36 feet, and then a dining room of a fair-sized dining room to be able to entertain. Sterling wanted to emulate the idiosyncratic character of the Upper East Side townhouses, which is what you see there. I wanted to play off the character of the designers. Sterling was what we might call robust. And believe it or not, I was trim. What developed were fat guys and thin guys. The advantage of the fat and thin was all the units could have their 18 by 36 foot living rooms. So here they were, and this is the first one. The fat guys were 2 units, a lower unit of 3 stories and an upper unit of 2 stories, and the thin guys were 5 stories. So the lower one has basically that configuration with an outside garden, maids' rooms and all that kind of stuff. And then the upper maisonette just had a little entrance hall with an elevator and a stair up to the top. The thin one came into an entrance hall, maids' rooms, garden room. And here you see that configuration of the fat guys, the parking garage below, the 3-story lower unit, and then the 2-story upper unit. This being the street and a whole progression of garden, front garden to house to back garden. But the real advantage was in the fat guys, or in the thin guys, that we were able to by pulling the circulation out of the thin one, we were able to get the 18 by 36 foot living rooms deep into the building. So here they are on the lower level of the fat guy. Here they are on the thin guy, and then here they are on the upper part of the upper maisonette. So the upper maisonette, you would go all the way to the top and then come down a floor to the bedrooms. On the lower unit, you came in at the lower level, came up to the living room, dining room, kitchen, and then up again to the bedrooms. Within the units, the served spaces were emphatically shaped and reiterated. The service spaces are clearly poché and carved. Roof lights provided light and stairs, light to the stairs and studies. On the street, bow windows, artist studios windows, balconies, and gardens help to articulate the difference and give the units character and identity. On the inner block, facing south, the building is more unified, contemporary, and glassy. Sterling and I had one disagreement. I wanted to use the garden as an amenity and therefore give the maisonettes roof terraces. He'd have none of it. So I did this drawing anyway, which is to put the little roof terraces up. So you come up to the main floor of the upper unit and you can come up to your outside space or go down to the bedrooms, and then these are the bedrooms to the lower unit, its big living room space, and then the entrance to both of them at the ground floor. In 1922, the Chicago Tribune held a design competition for its headquarters. Entries came from all over the world, and in fact, second place prize money allowed Eliel Saarinen, father of Arrow, to immigrate to the United States. This entry is by Adolf Loos and one of the more radical entries. In 1967, Claes Oldenburg did a late entry to the Chicago Tribune competition. Picking up on that theme, in 1980, Stanley Tigerman organized an exhibition called Late Entries to the Chicago Tribune Tower Competition. He invited 100 architects to participate. We were only allowed to submit one image of the canonic view. The only trouble was that Tigerman had also just produced the Daisy House. So my entry was to celebrate the original competition, to acknowledge the popular imagery of the Oldenburg entry, and to recognize the infantile humor emanating from Chicago at the time. Stanley didn't talk to me for 5 years. The Baum residence is the Baum residence was for a plastic surgeon and his wife who had a house. This is on Fairfield Beach, Connecticut, and these are all little tiny ticky-tacky beach houses. You would barely believe that they could survive. The doctor and his wife had a house in Fairfield and had a house on the beach. The thing is that what they had was, what was unique about what they had was a double wide lot. And so they wanted to sell the house in Fairfield and move here full time. So when I was thinking about this, oh, and by the way, they also wanted to be able to accommodate the families of their grown children and allow their friends to use the beach without entering the house. The street elevation refers both to the singularity of the McKim-Mead and White Low House and the stateliness of the Baum's former suburban residence. The beachfront emulates the scale of the adjacent ticky-tack beach houses with architectural fragments that have been washed ashore. So, so here is the potter's shed from the estate down Long Island Sound, the Temple of Poseidon from Sunion, Greece, a Georgian porch washed up from Georgia in the last hurricane, and the lighthouse which actually exists out in the water beyond. The continuity of the wall also allows the facade to be read as flapping in the breeze. The wooden deck here is both the tray to hold the fragments and an idealized beach. The house both allows for the informality of the beach and the formality of the doctor and his wife. The architectural allusions continue in the formal front hall, the Empire dining room, the gallery living room, and then you see the sort of sequence through the house. There are lots of other things which are, for instance, the house was raised up off the ground on that new platform, so when the hurricane did strike here, the water would wash through underneath and just take out the sort of the lower vestibule hall. On the second floor, the architectural allusions are in the master bedroom sound lock, which was to separate the doctor and his wife from their grandchildren, which were back there. And the Louis XIV alcove. So in Versailles, Louis XIV would sleep on a bed with side curtains because it was so cold and they didn't want to have to heat the whole place. The same is true here facing the Sound, which is the alcove begins to act like those curtains. More playful references are made in the if we go back, oops, wrong way, in the sort of fried egg linoleum floor in the kitchen, the soap bubble linoleum floor in the laundry room, and the deck, the jacuzzi with a view, which was a must, and the lookout on the third floor, which is accessed by the elevator over there. He wanted an elevator for when he retired so that he would still be able to get to the second floor after his first cardiac arrest. Anyway, there's the tower lookout on the third floor. This is Columbus State, actually done with MBBJ. Because the existing campus is a somewhat deadpan, it's Harold Nestor Hall at Columbus State. Because the campus is a somewhat deadpan 60s architecture, Nestor Hall cannot exactly fit in. The best part of the campus is the original quadrangle, which is over here. Nestor Hall forms another courtyard at the end of a vestibule administrative axis and marks it with a student lounge, simultaneously juxtaposing students and administration and elaborating both the organizational and the nascent attributes of the campus. So the idea was to make another courtyard here. This is the administration building, and to put the student lounge at the far end. The other thing that the pulling the building back like that does is cut off the view to Nationwide Tower, which is down that axis and not so cool to look at, and then turns the building to face the Board of Regents. So the formal front facade is very much about being respectful to the Board of Regents, but allowing something else to happen inside. The game is played out in multiple centers and edge reversals and the expansion of the material palette. The result is meant to be a building that is comfortable in its context, but in no way limited by it. As a Baroque or Broke ensemble of numerical material, architectural, and programmatic elements, the building attempts to resolve the conflicting energies bearing on an urban academic center without taming them into genteel submission. As the classroom building with faculty offices, student lounges, so faculty office is up here, classrooms there, student lounges here, and a conference center, at the lower level, and a performance space, a performance theater. The building is the center of the campus and a gateway between town and gown. The massing of the building is a non-ideal curve that sutures the overall campus grain to the urban context. The sculpted elevator shafts, arches, theater masses, rotated ramp, and bulging glass express the feral forces operating within the building. The windows as an emblematic elaboration of architectural elements, are choreographed as sometimes carefully proportioned, quartered, quadrupled, gridded, stripped, demillioned, punched, bent, and finally laid horizontal to rest. So on the front, you see the sort of carefully proportioned and quartered and some of the sort of broken strip and little bits of the grid. On the back, you see the grid, obviously the very strip windows, the quartered windows, the demillioned and compressed windows, and then over here on the roof by the theater is the one that becomes a horizontal skylight. The primary material of the exterior wall is the campus beige iron spot brick. However, it's studded on the south elevation and elsewhere augmented with patterned red brick, polished black granite, and spotted corrugated metal. The numerical order is constantly changing. The building is at once 10, 12, and 14 bays. The curve has pulled the pieces out of alignment. On the south elevation, the louvers, arches, and windows each march to a different drummer. The diagonal pattern of the studs stitches them together. The structural bay is 6 modules, but the room pattern is 4. When the systems align, they mark an event. This is the site of the Austrian Cultural Institute. Right here. And this was done, I only show this to irritate Jeff, was done with Jeff Kipnis and Friedel Baumer. And basically, the idea was bringing Austria, it was representing Austria in the United States and in particular in New York City. So the idea was the Manhattan glass skyscrapers meets the Alps on 52nd Street. And the result is a faceted blue glass sliver tower with the Austrian flag on the front. The waving flag articulates the cultural threshold between New York and Austria. And then when one comes in, you find the Austrian bits around. So there is the sort of Viennese lobby, which is there, the sort of shattered or rocky mountain gallery there, the sort of Viennese opera house here, the very carefully detailed wood, as in Viennese theater, little theater there. Can't quite see it. The library, which is the academy brought to Manhattan. And then the hotel has its entrance directly off the street. You can pull through, and then parking underneath the hotel and underneath here, but you'll see the parking. And then the only thing to point out here is the arena, which is on the way to the campus. The scheme is generated from the possibility of understanding or exaggerating the utility right-of-ways into pedestrian paths and light and air passages. So there were two places that we had to stay off of. One was this, which was an underground gas line running through the site, and the second was this, which was a high density, high line, electrical line running across the site and then up that way. So those were two places. So taking that idea was to try to figure out how to make those two constraints into a system or something more than just scars on the ground. So the idea was to say, okay, well, if we have those kinds of cuts through the site, could we have other kinds of cuts through the site? And in fact, could we connect the existing campus back up to the main street of the town through a pedestrian passage which would go up through the complex. So this is the entrance from the town to the gown. These little pieces are skylights, or holes which are open to the parking garage below. And this was a site, and they had a wonderful old home on it, and they tore the home down, which was the alumni house. So the idea was to keep the tree, which was symbolic of the old alumni house. So looking along the sort of retail on that sort of upper plaza, and then sort of working our way down through the complex, again, the transportation and the plaza. The plaza, both this plaza, which would be the rallies in the town, and the plaza closer to the arena for rallies, and then the little sort of flower courtyards that one finds as you work your way down. And at the lower end of the site, the passage up through, I neglected to mention there was a 45-foot drop across the site, which is what gave us sort of enormous opportunities. And then the green walls facing south, which is that way, and then the green roofs as emblematic of the sort of interest in technology and sustainability, which were the kind of companies that they were trying to attract to the area. So you see that the paths, there are many variations where they pass under the buildings or around the buildings, and then the whole apparatus of the parking, so that the parking not only fed up to what was above it, but it could feed directly out onto one of these little plazas and into an adjacent building. And then this is just the same sort of thing, again, with the parking feeding out to the second floor of the buildings here because of the steep slope of the site. And again, that piece, there was a zoning requirement that you were only allowed to be 3 stories at the edge of the site, but as you moved in, we thought you could move up, and which is why you get that sort of wavy form of the building. So there it is, 35 years of struggling and loving architectural stuff. Thank you.